Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Just a Few. My name is Patrick Antoine, and again, I thank you for taking the time to join me on this platform. Like I always say, this is a platform that affords me the opportunity to provide biblical responses to questions from people just like you. And if you have a question and you'd like for me to attempt a response to that question, the usual channel through which you can send that question is via email. The email address is on the screen, and I'll try to provide you with a response as soon as possible. Today's question it comes from an incident in the public ministry of our Lord Jesus Christ, in which he responded in a particular way to a desperate request from a woman, a Gentile woman. One of the places that we would find this exchange is found in the Gospel according to Matthew, and that's where I'll read the passage from, chapter 15, verses 21 to 28. So let me read the passage here, and the question is, though, was Jesus being abusive to a desperate Gentile woman? And let's look at the passage from verse 21. Then Jesus went out from Jewish territory, and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed." But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she cries out after us." Well, she's bothering us. But he answered and said, "I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Then she came and worshipped him, or pleaded with him, saying, "Lord, help me." But he answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." And she said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered and said to her, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire." And her daughter was healed from that very hour. Now you read this in the English translations, and it comes across as being harsh, disrespectful, and even condemning of this woman who Matthew tells us was a Gentile, a Canaanite woman. I think in the Gospel according to Mark refers to her as a Syrophoenician. She was a descendant of the people that the Jews in the days of Moses and Joshua were supposed to have driven out from the land and destroyed. Many of them were spared, and she was a descendant from those people. You need to understand the context of what is happening here. Another thing that we miss in translating from one language and culture to the next is there are some, let's say, tones and facial expressions and so on that can't be translated. So sometimes something comes across from one culture and language into another, and we can very quickly misunderstand what was happening in the original context because it's hard to translate everything. Things like sometimes, like I said, tone of voice and expressions in the eyes and so on, you can't translate that. Nevertheless, you need to understand that Matthew, the Gospel according to Matthew, was written primarily to a Jewish audience. And on most occasions, when you read the Gospels, when Jesus traveled through Jewish territory, he was met with skepticism, especially from the religious leaders, skepticism, unbelief, and even rejection. And on that occasion, on this occasion in this passage here, Jesus took what could be considered a rare trip outside of his homeland, outside of Jewish territory. And despite this woman now being ignored first by Jesus, he said nothing to her in response to her first pleading. And then she was despised by the disciples who was telling Jesus, just dismiss her, get rid of her. And then she was referred to by Jesus as a dog, a little domesticated dog sitting under the table waiting for a little scrap to be thrown to it. And Jesus said, I can't take what I came to give to children in Israel and give it to dogs. And despite all of that, this woman persevered, and her desperation, Matthew indicates, was eventually rewarded with Jesus' granting her the desire for her heart, the deliverance and healing of her demon-possessed daughter. What's happening here is that Jesus, just like he knew in, let's say, John chapter 4, when he passed through Samaria and met this woman at the well, and he knew exactly why he went there. Jesus knew what was in this woman's heart, and he used her tenacity and her fearlessness, her perseverance, her willingness to overcome all types of barriers as the ideal object lesson for the disciples of the type of faith that Jesus was not seeing among his own countrymen in Israel. And this is one of the few occasions where Jesus was able to say, great faith, your faith is great. Once he met a Gentile, a centurion, and he said the same thing. And in both cases, there were Gentiles, and Matthew identified those as contrast to what Jesus met in Israel among Jewish people who should have known him for who he claimed to be and accepted him and received his teaching. The exact opposite was taking place in Israel. So Jesus was not just being insulting or crass and harsh to this woman just because he's just this impolite person. Everything here on the surface goes against Jesus's character. And of course, it was deliberate to show the disciples, look at what I'm saying to this woman, and she still persevered and trusted in me. Look at what happened in Israel, where they were seeing all of the miracles, and yet the religious leaders hardened their heart. And that was Jesus's object, and that was Matthew's purpose in including this, to show the contrast of the type of faith that was expected of the Jewish people, that generally speaking never came. Compare it with the faith of this Gentile woman outside of Jewish territory and how she responded to Jesus. Jesus wasn't being insulting just for the sake of being insulting, because he eventually healed the woman with her daughter without even going to the place. He knew all along what he was going to do. And this was an object lesson to the people Matthew was writing to, his Jewish audience. And that's why Jesus seems to be harsh, but he was not being harsh just for the sake of being insultive to this Gentile woman. My name is Patrick Antwine. Thank you for the observation and for the question. And again, I trust that my response helped to clear this up a little bit in your mind. So until the next time, grace and peace be multiplied.